with our next guest, Senator David Perdue, Republican of Georgia, and former CEO of a sneaker company called Reebok and a retailer called Dollar General, but also a close friend of the president. And I don't see how do you compartmentalize things, Senator? I mean, the Chamber of Commerce is apoplectic. I can't imagine that you don't look at these tariffs if you were in one of your previous jobs and just say, we got to do this another way. Somehow you've come to grips with something that the president has done. Why? Because the means justify, or the ends justify the means in this case?
Joe, I lived over there. I've been dealing with China for 30 years. Tell me a better. I mean, right now we're trying to get several things done. One, we want them to stop stealing our technology. We want to stop forcing our transfer of technology into our joint ventures. We want them to comply with the WTO, something they've never done since we helped put them in there. We want them to stop the cyber war, and we want equal access. I mean, these are reasonable things the president is asking for. If tariff gets them to the table, which it did, then I think it's been worthwhile. Now what we have to do, though, is find a common ground, look for off-ramps, and make sure that we continue the process. The idea that we're going to wrap up some big trade deal in a ribbon here over the weekend, I think, is a false hope. This is a long-term process. It took a long time to get here.
And this is going to be an agreement to talk more. Is the best outcome?
Well, I think what happens is right now there are several things that they had agreed on before the May meeting here with Liu He. They backed up on some of those things, largely over compliance details, Joe, and I think those can be worked out. Now, the encouraging thing to me today is that we hear this story in the Wall Street Journal this morning about they're coming back to us with a list of their requirements and their requests. Look, we opened this negotiation with our list of requests. That's what we've been dealing with for the most part. So now we're into the give and take here to find out if we can find common ground.
Senator, is there a way to deal with Huawei? We've been trying to grapple with this now for weeks, but again this morning, President Xi putting that on the table. The President Trump, that is, also seems to have indicated over the past several weeks that he would consider it part of a trade deal. And yet we had Secretary of State Pompeo and the president himself has called it a national security issue.
Well, of course it's a national security issue. There are things that you can do, though. If they correct their behavior, there are always things that we can do together. That's part of this negotiation, part of the cyber war. Look, they don't separate their espionage done by government agencies and espionage done corporately. We do. And so, you know, this is one of the issues that we have in there. There's no question Huawei has been a bad actor.
But how would...
Well, we don't know. I mean, at this point, Joe, what we're trying to do is find out how bad it is. I mean, we're still getting to the bottom of that. But the second thing is there are things they can do. Specifically, ZTE was another perfect example of where we put onerous sanctions on them. We put a $2 billion fine. We got rid of their board. We got rid of their senior management. And we put 2 overseers inside the company. There are things that could be done with Huawei, but Huawei is a much bigger, much more serious issue.
Yeah, I think, Senator, the concern is that Huawei, if these devices are installed, the concern is that that information would have to be handed over to the Chinese at some point because that's how companies in China are expected to operate. That sounds like a much trickier problem to try and fix. With ZTE, we knew it was a violation of sanctions, and you can follow and track that pretty closely. This is a different beast.
Becky, you're exactly right. You know, when you look at the integration of information and data in the Chinese society, I spent a good bit of time with Alibaba and their leadership last year over there, and Tencent, DJI, and others. And the information flow and the data is basically open access to everybody in there. It's totally verticalized, both with the PLA and the government. So it's an entirely different approach to information and protection of privacy. This is the problem when you have a socialist state like China, is that privacy is the price. So Huawei is a very serious issue. I don't think this is going to be resolved this weekend.
Hey, Senator, I don't know how much of the debate you got to see last night, but there's a narrative that we hear from people that are pro-business that one of the reasons the economy is doing better now, whether it's unemployment or GDP or, you know, minority unemployment levels, is that the Obama administration, and this may be overstating, but had their, according to Rick Santelli, had their boot on the neck of corporate America. All right, so that was the 8-year narrative. The boot's removed. Now things are happening like this. But last night we saw 2 boots are now being proposed to go back on the neck. We just had a supposed Republican pollster on who says that will resonate with at least Democratic voters. Is that a winning issue, that you were a CEO. Is that you probably don't think so. Was that a winning issue to go hard against corporate America? That's what they did.
Well, we'll find out, but here's the problem. I've never seen so many people out of touch with reality. I mean, what we saw last night is a dramatic move to the left towards socialism, and the only way to win that argument is to defeat the argument that free enterprise and capitalism are working. And their number one criticism is that it's not, oh yeah, we have a turnaround, they say, but it's not good for everybody. Well, they're just out of touch with the reality. Let me just give you some numbers. We've created 5 million new jobs. That's not just at the top, Joe. We have the highest median income in U.S. history right now, the lowest African-American unemployment ever measured, the lowest Hispanic and Asian unemployment ever measured. I mean, the lowest unemployment overall in 50 years. I mean, this is a serious turnaround, probably the best turnaround in U.S. history, Joe.
How did you phrase it, Andrew? I think you said the economy, well, at least so far. Isn't that sort of the way
No. Look, the economy is doing much better.
So far, it may go any minute.
There's two questions.
Inequality.
There's 3 questions. Is it going to last?
Okay.
How much debt have we?
Hope springs eternal, but it won't.
No.
Right.
How much debt have we?
Right.
Is this going to cost us?
All right.
Right.
And there are still major large pockets in this country where it's not working. I would point out, I used this statistic yesterday, African Americans in Boston, the average net worth was reported to be $8. So you look at that and you say to yourself, there's something wrong here, right?
Look, you can find those isolated statistics like that, but if you look overall right now, this is the best economic turnaround I can find in U.S. history. And I'm a business guy. I can tell you for a fact that if you start releasing the onerous regulations that were put with over 8 years, you get a bump in optimism, and that's what we saw. CEO optimism and confidence among consumers popped right away. Then we did a tax bill. Then we did the energy bill. We're producing more oil and natural gas than anybody else in the world today because of President Trump and this agenda. And the last thing, we passed a bipartisan bill that freed up over $2 trillion on small community banks, guys, and that's real money. In total, we basically pulled the government off and freed up potentially as much as $6 trillion of capital to come back into the economy over time.
Hey, Senator, before you go, I want to ask you about this. I was in your home state in Atlanta just a couple weeks ago with Tony Ressler and interviewed him this after the heartbeat abortion law and asked him about that, and Governor Brian Kemp in particular. He said that the decision was political malpractice. We were talking about so many of the media and Hollywood companies that basically said we won't do business in the state as a result of it. He said, how can you say you're business friendly and yet go after what is in fact one of your largest employers? What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's interesting that the country, based on many in the national media, end up talking about that law and forget about the infanticide bills that were put forth in a couple of other states just a few months earlier. Look, Georgia's the best state in the country to do business. We all know that's been that way for the last 6 years. The people in California moved to Georgia in the movie industry for a reason. Those reasons are still there. The people love it there. The only problem is we're bringing we're importing a lot of the socialist concepts from California that have been proven to fail, but we're going to stand up to that. Right now, I believe that this is going to pass. We're going to have the economy continue to do well in Georgia, Joe.
Okay, yeah, that was Andrew. That was Ross.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can't tell the difference. You can tell with Becky, but with me, I think, yeah, you're gonna have to go back and watch that because I didn't ask those okay, Senator. Although I would have.
Joe, I was going to complain. If you were in Georgia and didn't call me, I was going to complain.
Yeah, I know. You're going to complain about that question. But I think that's obviously a legitimate question. I back Andrew 100% in all cases, Andrew. And you as well.
In all cases. Save the tape.
What did I miss? What just happened?
I don't know. We're shooting this thing today. We're all friends. Anyway, Senator, thank you very much. And I do